And very good evening, everybody. And as we are nicely chimed in tonight, courtesy of Big Ben chimes coming to you live from Edinburgh, we've got a wonderful evening ahead of us. I've met Ewan on several occasions, and you're just a nice guy, Ewan. You really are.
Thank you very much.
No, I mean it. You are. You're very easygoing. You're fun, and you know your stuff, which is a brilliant combination. So, Ewan Irvine, who is an officiant with the Spiritualist National Union, based up in Edinburgh.
Yep.
Ewan, I know we touched on this briefly before we went on air, but the difference between, because I very wrongly advertised you as minister to begin with until you corrected me, an officiant to a minister, is there a great deal of difference, or is it just like the evolutionary scale?
I think the difference is, well, you're invited, you have to be what's the word, nominated. I don't know if that's the word, for the efficiency, and then you go through the full course for that. And then minister is very much invited to be a minister, which encompasses all here. The efficiency, it took me a while to actually decide to do it, but my interest in the last decade now has very much been in counselling, which I do day to day now. But there was something that kind of just evolved or took its course there, because it was taking the counselling into the efficiency and being able to speak to folk and provide that listening ear as well. And then into, we talk about the marriages and we talk about the funerals here, but there is something about grief that affects us all. And I think there was something that kind of drew me to that with the counselling as well. So for me, it's, the ceremonies and different things are there, but it comes back to I think for me, the spiritual context of everything.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you touch on the subject of grief there, and we do. It's not meant, but unfortunately, sometimes our terminology can be a little bit vague. And we're very good. Sorry.
Yeah.
We're very good at saying there is no death, people don't die. Well, the sad reality is there is. It is something, we sometimes get locked into this sort of like spiritualist view of life, which is all well and good until we're meeting, talking, working, or whatever with people who aren't spiritualists and actually just human beings. This is becoming a very big thing with me, that we should be talking to human beings.
I think
we
tend to use phrases that very much don't highlight that word death or dying. And I think it's something that we do as people, as families. So when we talk about someone who dies, we may use the phrase, oh, they were away, they passed. It's different things like that, when actually it is something that's going to happen to every single one of us on this planet. But we don't kind of use the word. And then there's the whole thing about the difficulty afterwards of how we address it to somebody, how we talk to somebody about it, because I think the grief process It's a very personal thing, and there isn't any right nor wrong.
Yeah.
But we as friends or family, we're never quite sure what to say or not to say. And that can be in some ways the most difficult. And I think certainly in counselling, when that phrase that's often used to somebody, well, time's a healer.
Mm.
And we know in many ways it is. But if you're in that journey of grief, it's not something you want to hear.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, people say we feel an awkwardness, don't we, at
We do.
times? I've had to learn and grow and evolve my role when I'm working with people going on that grief path. Very recently, I had a lovely gentleman come in, ex-forces, really nice chap, right in the middle of that grief path. And a few times in his talking, I was having this inner dialogue with myself because I meant to say something, and then I was going, "Shut up." And you say something, and I go, "Shut up." And at the end, again, I'm not saying this, look at me, this is just experience. He went, "I found it really good just to open up to you." He said, "Thank you for that." Because we feel awkward and we want to say something, don't we, that's going to take the pain away. We want to.
And yet we can't.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's about allowing people to express that grief in their own way.
And I think that grief can come out in various ways. There's an excellent author, and she actually has quite a spiritual view on everything as well. She died a number of years back, but it's Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she talks about the 5 stages of loss. And it's not fluid or linear in any way. We can go back the way forward, but it talks about how we go through everything from denial to anger, actually, to finally there's an acceptance.
Hmm.
And I always remember many years after my father died, I remember my mother saying, well, I'm not 100% happy, but I'm content.
Yeah.
And maybe that's in some way we would get to, but that journey, very personal to each and every one of us.
It is, very much so. I remember when my parents passed, and it was the most unlikely person who said this to me, lovely fella, but I really didn't expect this sage philosophy. And he said to me about the path of grief, and he says, "You know what?" He said, "Where you are now, it's there all the time. Wherever you look, it's there." And he said, "In time, you learn to put that box to one side, and then you choose to visit it rather than it taking." I won't go into the details about him, but from somebody who you probably expect a knuckle sandwich from them rather than anything else. And that's always been a big thing with me. It's so true. It's there. It's there in time. But again, it's allowing all those that we meet on their grief path that space to explore it.
Yep.
This chap recently, he's ex-forces, really nice guy, and we spoke on a very similar level. And one of the few bits I did throw in, I said, your life has ended. The life that you knew has ended, but you've got a new life now that you've got to grow into. And he went, "Yeah, I get that." And it really is. But again, I think we're not very accustomed to death, are we, in this country?
No, we're not like other countries where, you can look at places like South America where you can walk down the street and there's a shop, almost like a showroom with coffins.
Mm.
And part of them are out in the streets and they have sales and everything.
Yeah.
To, very much where you have that in some cultures, that Day of the Dead, where it's very much celebrated, and the picnics and everything. And so it's much more open. I don't know what it is about British society that's very, it's not spoken about. And I remember going back to when I was very young and I had an uncle that died. And I remember my parents were driving to see my aunt. And I remember being told, now, don't mention your uncle. Why not?
Yeah.
Don't want to get her upset. So, does that make things worse? Because suddenly what has happened and that person is suddenly not being talked about, which is almost more obvious than being talked about.
Yeah, no, that's very true. We do shy away from these things. There's a wonderful little snippet in, I can't remember the name of it, but the premise is this elderly lady's got this robot becomes her companion, and
I still to watch. Is it Android or
Android?
something?
That's it. But in there, there was one little scene where I thought that is so poignant. This lady, she's on her own now. Her husband died, and it was coming up for their 50th wedding anniversary, and nobody would acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. And in the end, she just lost her rag and said, "It's our anniversary." And they're going, "But he's not here. It doesn't matter. It's still our anniversary."
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, yeah, we do things like that.
Mm-hmm. And we just never quite know what to say. I think that's one of the beauties of spiritualism and mediumship, that actually when they do come through from spirit, they'll soon say what they want to say. Yeah. There's no shying away from it.
And also through the different facets of mediumship. The assistants, I was just saying about when this chap was talking to me, I was like two personalities. I wanted to say something and I was going, shut up, shut up. And I'm pretty sure that was just a little bit of influence from somebody who was going, shut up, just listen, shut up. That's all you got to do, just listen. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And when the time is right for communication. I was out in Germany recently teaching. I had a marvelous time, but I was, you know what we're like, don't you? Do you go away and iron everything the minute it comes out of the suitcase, or is that just me?
No, I'll try and iron it before it goes into the suitcase, and then it just has to have a shake when it comes out, and hopefully everything's okay.
I do iron it before it goes in the suitcase, but when it comes out again, I've got to iron it again. And I was stood in the hallway of this little hotel, and they'd lent me iron an ironing board, and I could hear the chambermaids, and they had the radio on. Now, my eldest brother, and his wife lived in Germany, so I had a few holidays out in Germany. So being back out there was quite reminiscent, the style of houses and just all the little things. It was like, oh God, yeah, I remember this. And he loved the band Talk Talk. He was always playing Talk Talk. And a Talk Talk song came on the radio. And the title of it was Living in Another World Now. And I was stood there ironing and sobbing. The chambermaid came up. Are you all right? I'm fine. Yeah. It's just those, no medium could ever give me a message to beat that experience. Seriously.
But it's also amazing how, somebody who's died, and we talk about their favourite songs, so there's these memories and everything, and somehow we're drawn to turn on the radio or perhaps the TV. I never watched TV, but the radio is turn the radio on, and suddenly it's that song.
Yeah.
There's something there that happens about that, or it's, I don't know, there's something, again, I think it's just that connection.
Yeah, it's magical. When I've been involved in organising funerals, when we're talking about the music, if possible, we try and steer clear of current music. We had one funeral and it was a song that had just been in the charts. Well, you can guarantee it for about the next month. Every shop you went into, every time you turned the tape, there it was. Every 5 seconds. Oh, for God's sake!
Yep. And also in life as well. I don't know if we're getting better at it, but thinking about, well, we're all going to go at some stage. Do we actually make plans? Do we say to anyone what we would like, etc.? Because
yeah, I've come across that on both sides of the fence. I've taken funerals where literally all I had to do was read what's been written, which has been wonderful because it's so personalised. And then you go to the other extreme of what was your mum's favourite hymns? No idea. What was her hobbies? Oh, shouldn't do that. Yeah,
before,
you got to talk for half an hour on somebody who didn't do much and was a bit plain.
Yeah, and you've got to kind of somehow fill that in many ways.
Yeah.
I mean, someone asked me a couple of years back, what's the songs you're going to have? And I said, going into Highland Cathedral, which I actually heard at a funeral the other week as well, but going into Highland Cathedral and coming out on Wish Me Luck as You Wave Me Goodbye.
Yeah, we had one with that, and it was great. To me, like the funeral service is this wave.
Yeah.
And then, you got that for the committal because that is the farewell. But if you can end it just with that little bit of uplifting music, or even I had one chap go out, Crazy World of Arthur Brown, Fire. I was like, are you sure?
Yeah, maybe there's the odd one. I mean, I did hear, and it was a true story about somebody that wanted the Robin Hood theme. And they meant the Robin Hood theme from the film, not the Robin Hood, Robin.
Yeah.
So, I heard that did happen. But we will have, in these times of where everything is going on and it's the depth of despair and things, I always find as well, somewhere within that, there is a little bit of humour from some place as well.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings it back up again. But, I remember after my grandfather died and my grandmother wanted to see him. So it was kind of, okay. So took her along. And she went in and then she had called for another seat. I don't know why she called for another seat, but time passed, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And she came out and there was a waiting room with a few folk in there. And I think the only thing we could think of saying was, how was he? And she just turned around and said, the best he's ever looked. You just want to kind of leave quickly. But it's always something that's stuck with me as well here. But, Yes, it's in spiritual terms. There's something about being part of that process, but of course, giving that proof afterwards that someone who has died has passed on and coming back with the information. And I do find from time to time they will talk about their funeral as well.
Mm.
And they'll talk about who turned up and who didn't turn up, or something that happened, etc. And half the time they find it hilarious. We may not have laughed at the time, but they certainly did.
I even had one once complaining because a member of their family was there who they absolutely hated, and they'd said they are not to come to my funeral. Well, they did get invited to the funeral. They did go, and the guy came back and complained. I was like, oh my God.
By that time, it's a bit too late.
I know. I stood up there as a medium thinking I'm going to get shot in a minute.
and it probably wasn't, well, it wouldn't have been funny for the family at the time, but I remember one reading given, and the person that came through spoke about them dropping the box when they came out. And I thought, I can't say that. And all I got was, yeah, you've got to say that. And I did. And yet they dropped the box on the way out. But again, they found that incredibly funny from up there. I don't think it would have been a laughing matter when it actually happened here.
No.
But if that, that's providing that proof of, something that can only happen once in a blue moon.
Yeah, once in a lifetime, isn't it? I've never heard of that. I think the worst experience I had when I was officiating, we had the service and then it was internment. And the ground where it was very heavy clay and it had rained. So I'm stood there dutifully as, the gentleman's going into his resting place. But as I'm talking from the book, I suddenly became aware I was moving. Because for some reason I put my dress shoes on, which have flat soles, and I was just gradually starting to slide towards the grave, and I'm desperately trying to keep my voice under control while trying to dig my heels in, because any second now I'm going to be joining him.
But it comes back to the personal stories and things, and interestingly, you mention about someone maybe we only knew about them, their favourite hymn and everything, etc. And the one hymn that seemed to go back in our family a lot, I don't know why, was the Old Rugged Cross. Yeah. I just don't like that hymn. No, so when it came to the case of a family member that died and my mother was arranging the funeral, of course, all she could come up with was the Old Rugged Cross. And of course, I mistakenly said, can we not change it? And I got this look that said, but what to? And I said, did you have a favourite song? And my mother said, oh, she liked Johnny Ray. And I'm thinking, who the heck is Johnny Ray? I said, anything else? She was always singing this one song, always. And I thought, we've got this. This is good. We've got this. And his mother, what was the song? She said, how much is that doggy in the window? I was weighing both up, to be honest. But I think it's also, when you hear these, I didn't know that, and of course it was incredibly funny, but it's personal.
Oh yeah,
that
very
person. It's who they were.
Very, very much. So your role in spiritualism? Are we going right back to childhood here, or is this a later
I
development
think
in life?
we're kind of going back to. Do you know? I keep and I know that through childhood things can get a little bit. What's the word? Things added in through the brain or whatever. But I have a memory of actually looking through this wee box, and I remember for long enough calling it a propagator, but it wasn't. It was an incubator because I was in there for the first couple of weeks of my life. But for some reason, I do remember that. I don't know why, but my earliest memory is probably about 3-year-old, etc. I wasn't seeing dead people, but there was something, I don't know, it was kind of, I would get a strange feeling if something was about to happen, and it usually did. So that was a bit strange. And then we come up probably to my teens, and we had moved house, and my father was still alive at that point. But in that house, I think 2 years in, he died. But the house, we didn't know much about it. It was an older house, but I think that's where everything kind of peaked for me. I always had an interest in ghosts and the paranormal. At that stage, if I saw a ghost, I would have probably run a mile. But my parents used to love visiting the stately homes and things. And of course, you get a tour. And my first words going in were, "Where's the ghost? What's in the room?" But after my father died, it was like various things kind of happened. And I remember the first time it really kind of affected me was, I think my mother was actually in hospital. And I got back one night and I was the only one in. So got back through the door and went into the lounge. And I remember walking in, and the air was like, it was a heaviness. And the only way I can describe it is it was like walking through water. And I've only ever had that feeling once before. And I remember sitting down, and I remember hearing this thud from upstairs and these footsteps across the room. And I remember thinking, it's the cat. Must have been trying to convince myself.
In
And
boots.
I went through to the kitchen. Here was the cat walking in at the back door. It wasn't until a few months later where I can't remember. I think my mother said to me, "Have you experienced anything strange in this house?" And I said, "Well, that's what happened. There's been another few things that happened." I remember one day I was out in the garden, again, the only one in. I'd taken my watch off, which was actually my father's watch, and put it on the worktop. Remember coming back in, there was no watch there. I remember I don't know, I never thought twice about it. Went up, had a shower, came back down, and there was the watch back on the worktop. We had that. But my mother had experienced things. She had come in one night, and she was sitting there, and she heard someone coming in the vestibule door, so front door, vestibule door, climbing the stairs and walking across the room. And she must have just sat there petrified. And then she must have built the courage to kind of go upstairs. No one there. My brother experienced things. And then my brother, he had a girlfriend at the time who kind of moved in with us. And I think she'd taken a bath one night. And she had heard someone come in and up the steps and up the stairs and shouted, kind of, "Oh, who's there?" Because there was no one. So I think that's really kind of piqued my interest, and and for me, it was the beginning of realizing that in situations like that, or a house or a building or whatever, the proof is the fact that everybody has heard something or experienced something.
Yeah.
It's not until later it's all put together.
Interesting. Similar with myself when I was growing up. Looking back now, I can say yes, I was aware of spirit, but at the time it was just people. I used to sit there quite happily nattering. People were worried about me because I had a reputation of being a loner. It wasn't. It's because I preferred dead people to living people. They were much more fun.
That's still the case in some occasions as well, actually. But yeah, but when I look back on childhood, I find my memory more hazy now when about things. And I did take COVID and was in hospital with COVID, and I always wonder if it's that. But there's quite a lot, look back on them, and other folk will remember things, and I can't.
There. Is that your wee dog has joined?
Yes, he's being annoying today. I don't know what he's trying to find, but he's all over the place. And so yes, so that was that. And then I think it came to me, I was 18, 19, again back to my mother here. She got invited to a spiritualist church. And I think she got a few messages. And me, at that time, I was being Mr. Skeptical. And I remember going along, It was how we have the mini sittings.
Yeah.
And I went along one day. It was a wee event they were having. And of course, no one knew that, it was my mother was related to me and vice versa. And I had a mini reading. And I remember the first thing was, I'm sitting there, as some people do like that, and I'm not moving my eyes or moving my face or lips or anything. I'm going to sit here like that. And I remember the first thing she said was that she said, well, I've got a man here and his name is John. That was my father's name, but me, I'm thinking, common name. So the next thing she said was, now he's pointing up here, but it's not his heart. Well, my father died from breast cancer.
All right.
So there's a little bit of me that starts to go, whoa, okay, right. And then there was other things she said, and I remember her saying, your mum, I'm aware of someone in the spirit, and I know your mum must have had another child, or it never quite got to the earth plane. I'm saying, no, I would have known that. I would have absolutely have known that until I checked it out with my mother, and she said, yes, it actually happened. There was other things she said that just tied in completely, but even a number of years later. And that's the thing I think about messages as well, because I was told she told me I had a grandmother that had been psychic. Well, yeah, seemingly she read the flames and the fire for people. But I had an aunt, and she said, you had an aunt that's talking about she would dabble. Now there's a word from the past.
Good, isn't it?
And I'm thinking cauldrons and everything, and the whole toil and bubble, and it wasn't until we were cleaning our house out after she passed that hidden in a wee cubby hole was it was something like the 1930s book of fortune telling and everything, which I've got somewhere to this day. But suddenly it was, okay, that's that. And that was a number of years later.
It's interesting they're talking about evidence, because there's been quite the debate going on. I'm very firmly in the school of the only person who can say if that was a good message or not is the recipient.
Yeah.
Because, everybody wants to, oh, no, that's not, deride or over big what's being said. But at the end of the day, it's down to the recipient.
Yeah.
And it can be the smallest thing.
Yeah.
It can be something that, a lot of people will just dismiss it. Like you said earlier about dropping the coffin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we'd want to dismiss. I can't say that. And I mean, go on.
Well, it takes me back to another reading many years ago, and it was to a mum, and she'd lost her son, and he came through, and he was talking about his grave, and he just showed a picture of his grave with lots of Coca-Cola cans round it. Me, the brain is saying, you can't tell his mum that the grave has been littered with all these Coca-Cola cans, or there's a group of folk there and just toss them on. And I think this is where we kind of say, when we've got to go with what they want to give, because there was a wee voice from up there that said, no, you've got to tell her. So I did. And that was the bit of proof, because she said he was always taking Coca-Cola, and when anyone visited the grave, they would place a can of Coca-Cola.
Brilliant.
And I almost missed that, stupidly missed it.
Yeah. Yeah, the mind of the medium can really get in the way.
And for us, when we think, crikey, there's that, that they came through with. So it never ceases to amaze me that, what spirit want to bring through, what they want to talk about.
Yeah. I've been doing an interesting exercise with a few of my circles, just to try and get this point over how much our mind interferes, and give them 3 bits of evidence. It could be like blue boats, salmon, and a bicycle. And I said, make a message of that. And we got totally different stories coming out of it. And as I say, it just highlights how much the individuality of the medium can either take stuff on the right path. I love engineers when they come through, because my dad was an engineer. I was brought up with engineers. I work with engineers, and I know the mindset, and I know it. The second it steps in, and go, oh, right, this guy's an engineer. Because suddenly everything's laid out like this in front of you, and it's like, oh, right, okay, that's great. Other mindsets, I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on here, but we'll go for it.
Yeah. And it's bringing that, to say, that evidence through, and it's how we bring it through, and I think as well how long we try and spend with somebody at the platform as well, because that can vary. And of course we want to get around as many people as we can, but equally each message has got to be meaningful, and in a way they're in control of that.
Yeah.
But generally, if we can spend with each person that 4 to 5 minutes, because I think it's something that a lot of mediums kind of say, how long do we spend with somebody?
Yeah, that is a perennial question.
Yeah.
I've always worked on 6 to 7 minutes as an average. Some are short. And again, it's the personality of the communicator.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced this. Somebody will step in and say something and then walk away, and you think, hang on.
Yeah, that's happened.
Yeah, I think he's finished.
I just think to try and if we can spend at least a few minutes with somebody, and yet some messages can be very short and it's so quick, but I want to try and spend a few minutes. 30 seconds, 1 minute, I think is doing an injustice kind of thing to spirit and to ourselves. We want to maintain that contact in many ways.
And again, it is this ongoing debate of what constitutes a good message. And again, the answer, well, my answer is, it's only the sitter that can actually verify that.
Yeah.
I had this gentleman, he did fair play. He wasn't being awkward, but I wasn't hitting it on the nail hard enough for him. So I just said to my communicator, I said, right, come on, I need something to pull this one back, because I can see what's going on. And he just thought specific about a young lad on Earth now that he is incredibly. I said, my God, he's so proud of this boy. I said, he really is. And the sitter said, that's all I wanted to hear. He was christened a couple of weeks ago using his name. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it can just be that one little nugget.
And that's, when we talk of mediums, when our mind comes into and we start changing things, because like for instance the Coca-Cola, how could that be kind of thing, and suddenly we're not saying something or changing something, and it's just that very much we go with what they say.
Yeah. Another thing I've been working with quite a lot is reflective practices on our mediumship. In fact, that'll be part of what I'm bringing up to Scotland later this year. There's no end of material out there, I'm not being disrespectful, but there's no end of how to beat spirit into giving you more evidence, how to pin spirit up against the wall and throttle them until they tell you everything.
Yeah.
But there's very, very little about the development of the medium, not of the mediumship, the medium.
Yeah. And I think that's very important as well, because there's kind of no actual, I don't know if it's a word, guidebook in many ways. You've got to experience it.
Yeah.
And you've got to try different things and go to different courses. And yes, it can take years. And I think sometimes, social media does have a lot to blame, because there really are excellent mediums out there, but you can see a few that are maybe told they're a medium, or they've spent 6 months in a circle, and suddenly the website's up and the business cards are done, etc. And you think, really?
I see that. I call them victims of their own publicity.
Yeah.
And again, this wonderful, it was the last session of our legacy course here today with wonderful Lindsay Percival. And that has nothing to do with mediumship. It's all about personal development on various levels. And it is worked really well, but we engage in the conversation. There's formulating a potential plan for the future, and that's bringing mediums from the circle to working on the platform, because that's always a bit of a dead area. Right, you've sat enough, you're ready, off you go.
Yeah.
And there's not a big catchment. There's not a big safety net there for people.
There's not, because it'll go well, and it'll at times not go so well.
Yeah.
And then we're used to starting and saying, right, giving a message on the platform, and then somebody says, okay, you can do another one. And we're thinking, No. I just do one. I'm just one message
Yeah.
from our first, and it's trying to build up that experience and everything as well. And I say, I mean, there's some excellent mediums out there, but there are also some I look at and think,
Yeah.
you're just, it's kind of out of kindergarten, so to speak, and then.
I do have to agree. But this area that I find really interesting is that stepping from the circle to the platform, because it's not just the way that you work with your mediumship, however that transpires. It's also, it goes on. It's the pitfalls, the things to watch out for, the things to be aware.
Yeah.
Number one, I always say to people, stop saying yes. Every time the phone rings, you go, yes, yes, yes. And I said, and before you know it, you've got 2 free Sundays in a year and your old man's threatening to leave you.
Yeah. And I think I've got to that stage. I don't do as many. And
more and more people are saying this. It's fascinating me.
So I'll do maybe that 2 or 3 workshops during the year. We'll do some charity events and do churches, but I'm not cramming them in every week, etc. So I think I'm more inclined these days just to feel I can say, no, I'm not able to.
Yeah. That is so interesting hearing that from you as well. And it is not an arrogant, because I struggled with it when I started doing it, and I very self-critical on things, and I thought, I'm not being arrogant.
No.
I'm working a lot in the church. I'm doing a lot, and there are times I need me. I need to be me, and also, sadly, some venues you go to and you are fodder, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
Oh, we're here. Quick, get up. Right, thank you, Ewan. That was a wonderful service. Next week we've got a really wonderful medium. You just think,
yeah, I've heard that as well. Yeah, make sure you come along next week because it's going to be really busy, kind of.
Yeah, I heard that one. I said, "Oh, shall I come and learn what I've done wrong?" I was just mortified by it.
But you do get that. But equally, there are a lot of churches out there just so lovely.
Oh, very true.
And it's nice to it's lovely to go along, and I think these are the ones I tend to do. They're the ones that I'll keep going back to, and I'll say yes to.
Yeah, and again, I'm hearing that a lot from people. That they will choose where they go to work. I think the word service is being challenged a bit because we were always brought up and that drummed into us.
Yeah.
To be of service, And I think for a while it brought in this air of being servile. And as I said, the yes. I say to people, just say, oh, interesting, leave it with me. And I said, have a think, look at your diary to make sure, A, you're not double booked yourself, B, you're not in a run of about 10 services every damn Sunday, and just look after yourself. But I do find now there's more and more mediums. I've had mediums say here, oh, we only work here and one other place in this area, and that's it. That's all we do. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Every medium that I've seen, they'll almost do a service every night or 5, 6 a week, have burnt out.
Yeah.
There's not been one that hasn't.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And you can, it's difficult to actually say to anyone because, I think it's maybe you can kind of say in a compassionate kind of way, but very seldom does that person stand back a little.
It's that excitement, isn't it? When it first really starts to work. When things are being accepted, when people
No,
contacting you and saying, "Will you come and serve?" Right at the beginning, that's quite a big. Oh my God! Somebody wanted me.
it's a big boost.
Yeah.
I learned my first big lesson at that point, which was very much needed, and I've never ever forgotten. But I remember going to a church one night, and it was brilliant. Everybody took everything, the message across. It was good, and I remember going away thinking, "You've got it." A week later, I went to another church, and I wanted that ground to swallow me up there and then, because it was shocking.
Yeah.
And I remember sending that wee thought up later that said what happened. And as clear as day, this voice came back that said, "You got too big for your boots, son."
Yeah.
And whew, I've never forgotten that.
Yeah. I've seen. We used to have there was a medium many years ago, and yeah, very competent medium, but there was this arrogance about them. Yeah, how many are in the audience today? Well, actually, it's a church, so it's a congregation. You're trying to bring it down, reel it in a bit. And they were out working here, there, everywhere, private sit-in services, all the time. And I remember thinking, sorry, the human body. I've studied physical and trance mediumship and gone away. When you're doing that, you're working in this very strong, altered, and higher vibration. And when you come back from them, you have this wonderful come down. Spirit are much gentler than drugs. They let you down smoothly.
Yeah, that's not the boom.
Yeah, not the waking up growling. It's just, it has a big effect on your body. And my theory is, it's all well and good being in connection with spirit, but you've got to be mindful that's a higher vibration, much faster rate than our physical bodies. And after a while, it's like running, trying to drive a car fast in first gear.
Yeah.
It's going to have this effect. And sure enough, with the person I was talking about, there followed about a year and a half of really bad health problems.
Yeah.
And I did think, it's not, either it's karma. It was just like, I really believe that a lot of that health problems was triggered by the last 3 years of doing readings 24/7.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I don't think I could sustain doing 4 or 5 churches a week. I know myself I would burn out, and from witnessing everybody else. So yeah, I think I'm at that stage where I kind of just step back a little bit.
Because I think also there is the psychological side, like you're just saying, doing 4 or 5 a week. After a while, excuse the language, that was just, what word I'm going to say, aching.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like that.
Yeah, where's the joy? When it becomes a drudge, when it becomes, oh God, where am I now? That energy, that thought process, that presence is obviously going to follow you through in your mediumship and how you demonstrate and how you perform. And the worst performance you have, the worse you're going to feel, and you end up in this spiral.
And yeah, so it's something kind of got to be very much aware of. But incidentally, it takes me back. I remember one time, or actually a few times, when I've looked and seen, or reflectively looked and seen where there's been a gap where I've not had bookings has kind of tied in with something that's happened, like my mother's illness or my mother passing. And actually, I didn't have anything in there. When I did end up in hospital, there was nothing in for these few weeks. And I'm always kind of thinking, okay.
Yeah.
Did they know?
Now, religiously checking your diary and being very careful when you got 2-3 weeks.
Yes, I'm kind of thinking, oh, crikey, what's going to happen then?
Quick, get a booking in.
I mean, there was a time where I was actually driving, or about to start to drive up to Aberdeen, actually, to a church. And I got as far as the Queensferry Road. And I remember I was in the car. Now, if I'm stopped, especially in traffic, I really have never had a tendency to bring the handbrake up. I'll just kind of sit there on a flat surface and maybe have my foot on the brake or whatever. But so there was kind of traffic jam, and I was sat there. And I remember hearing this male voice. I don't know who it was, but as clear as day just said, pull the handbrake up now. And then they said it again. I pulled the handbrake up, and then suddenly this large van crashed into the back of the car. But by pulling the handbrake up, I did not go into the vehicles in front.
Yeah.
Again, I still ended up in hospital with concussion, a broken sternum and things like that. But I remember thinking, crikey, it could have been worse. I'm glad I did what they said straight away.
Here's a quick question then for all those wonderful people watching tonight. Who else has experienced? Because it's the voice, isn't it?
Oh, it's, yeah. Uh-huh.
My experience with that voice was you didn't challenge it. You just
no. It was direct, and it was not one that you would ignore.
Yeah, and it was just like, oh, okay. It's like you've received this direct instruction. Yeah. So, anybody watching, have you ever experienced this?
And you just couldn't ignore it. And I did it straight away. And as I say, it's not something I ever do.
I was just saying, I find that fascinating because my experience was something was said and I went, oh, okay, and carried on walking. And after about 5 steps, then the logic started coming in. I'm going, well, who was that? And why am I doing what they told me to do?
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't I even question it? I just went, yeah.
Yeah. No, the voice is one that when it came through, I did this straight away. So I still to this day don't know who said it.
Yeah, exactly it.
So
Ewan, it's been a wonderful evening in your company, as always. I know the conversations meandered a bit.
Yes, I like meandering conversations that kind of meander here, there, and everywhere.
Should have a wee glass as well when you have a meandering conversation, because they tend to meander even better then, don't they?
I have a little bottle of wine for later.
A little bottle of wine, very nice.
Yeah, just chilling in the fridge, Saturday night.
There we go. So Mandy G, when the house was on fire and I was still inside, I heard a voice saying, go, go, go.
And you just follow it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I find that subject interesting because I think if you were to do a poll on how many people have experienced that, it would be quite a high figure.
And in actual fact, because I do it in one of the talks I have about going back to the war and spooky experiences, which is a whole other subject. But the classic is there's a lady and she takes her children and they move out of London and they go to Devon, which was going to be considered safe during the war. So they go there That's my clock going off in the background again here, just to add to the whole ambience of the story.
This is
But we go
wonderful.
down
From
there.
London.
I know, London, Westminster chimes here. So after a few weeks, she starts to hear this voice saying, "Go back to London, go back to London." And it suddenly is so loud that she does not question it. And she heads back to London, which was not the safest place during the war. And a couple of weeks later, she receives a letter from one of the neighbours in Devon to say, "We are so glad that you moved back to London, because a couple of nights after you left, that house was bombed and it is no more."
Mm. Yeah.
And that is just, I think, ooh.
Well, beautifully timed there with that very evocative chime. Because you really are that gifted storyteller as well.
I try.
You gave us a wonderful evening. You can find this, anybody watching tonight or later on, in the archives about witchcraft and lore of Scotland, and that was just wonderful. And you still owe me a trip to the Blackpool Mausoleum. Remember that?
Oh well, yeah. That's by the power of daytime, because it's too spooky at night. Far too spooky.
But you're also doing things with the Fringe Festival coming up, are you not?
So I'm doing Tales of Haunted Edinburgh.
Wonderful.
And funnily enough, I've got in the atmospheric music as folk comes in, the chimes there as well, etc., going on. But we are talking about some of the kind of famous stories, like we've got Birkenhead, we've got the Mackenzie Poltergeist, which is the Black Mausoleum. I've introduced a few new ones this time. We've got Holyrood House, Holyrood Palace going on as well. And just some other stories. Mary King's Close we're talking about, the vaults. And yes, some of the stories going back. But the whole point of it, it's not just a story. There are grains of truth.
Yeah.
Lots of grains of truth. Some of the stories may have been changed or embellished a bit over the year, but it gets back to what actually happened, what has been seen, etc. And that's where I find it really kind of quite fascinating.
Well, what I just found fascinating, when you said about the Mackenzie Poltergeist, my streaming box flash an orange light, which is incredible because there isn't an orange light on it. It's blue.
Oh, okay. No, this is a story of
and
George
it's just got it again.
Yeah. George Mackenzie in the Covenanters prison in Greyfriars Kirkyard. Yeah. And this is the story of where George Mackenzie and the Covenanters, just a few yards down, they kind of had this uneasy peace over 300 years until someone broke into the mausoleum, and it was thought it was a homeless person, maybe just looking for shelter. But they fell through the floor, which was wood, and of course, over time that rots, right down onto the coffin itself. And the day after that happened, suddenly there were all these reports. And they all feature the same sort of things happening, and still to this day, there are these reports. So it's thought that George Mackenzie, Edinburgh's poltergeist, is very active at that bit. But this is a place where tourists love to go. Also has, it's just next to Greyfriars Bobby, and you go in and there's the grave of, wee Greyfriars Bobby's master and everything. It all looks quite nice by the power of day.
I can't wait. Ewan, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Have a great time at the Fringe. I
Yep.
know one of our congregation was up there last year for it, and she came to see you, and she was messaging saying, "Oh, this is great! This is really good. I'm really enjoying this." She also went to Stuart Michael, is it Mitchell, the comedian?
Oh, he's brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see the videos of him on Facebook and thing, and he's just so funny.
yeah, he is
Yeah.
very gifted. So there's Maggie saying she's read about Blackfriars Kirkyard and the whole place is fascinating.
It's actually, it's not quite black. It's Greyfriars. Greyfriars Kirkyard.
Greyfriars.
Greyfriars.
Right. Okay.
It's a very atmospheric place.
Well, I'm looking forward to finding that out myself, exploring that myself. So,
and it's
anyway,
just up the road from the Elephant House, which is the cafe where J.K. Rowling is said to have written her books about Harry Potter.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Is it near a bar?
Oh, there's lots of bars. Yeah, there's bar, and I can't remember the famous one that's haunted as well. But you can then, just when you come out the Kirkyard, you can go down to the Grass Market, where you feature Maggie Dixon's pub, which was the story about half-hung Maggie, because they didn't hang her right in the olden days, and she very much was carted off to the cemetery until they heard a little knocking on the box, and she was very much alive. And there was no law or laws at that time to deal with someone that they hadn't been able to hang first time.
Yeah.
So she lived a full life, but she was known as Half-Hung Maggie. And it said her ghost haunts there. You've got the White Hart Inn, probably one of the most haunted pubs in Edinburgh, as well, and been able to have been there a couple of times for a number of hours, and certainly, yes. So there's lots of bars down there. Great place at the Fringe as well, because they have, I think it was on Saturday, they have like a kind of wee antique type market and things like that. So,
is there such a thing as a haunted pub crawl?
Oh, you could do that in Edinburgh quite easily.
I think there's a new line for you there.
Yeah, you've got Deacon Brodie's pub and everything, and then you can come down to the Grass Market. Actually, what I'm talking about there was one of the places they hanged people for all sorts of misdemeanors, including witchcraft as well.
Okay.
You go up the road, you go to the Castle Esplanade again, where all the hangings and the gallows and everything. And then a few yards down, you come to the Market Cross, again, where they like to do the hangings and everything. And it's at that place that William Burke, the body snatcher, Burke and Hare, where Burke was hanged to the visitor attraction of 20,000 people to see him being hung.
Wow.
And it's not the biggest of areas, but they all crammed in. There was souvenirs of the day, postcards. And his skeleton still hangs in Surgeons' Hall because they dissected him. And I don't know why it was done at the time, but they took the skin of William Burke and they made little souvenirs, so little books, little wallets.
Oh my
God. Yeah, that's how we Scots in the olden days seemed to do things.
That's a beautiful story. Ewan, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight or watching us later on Catch Up or listening to the podcast, all these technical things we get into these days. Please remember, we will be streaming, he says hesitantly, we will be streaming the service from Paul tomorrow. That is with Mark Stone. We are 1/3 of the way through our refurbishment. It's a bit frustrating, but this is the world today. So over the next few weeks, you will continue to see improvements and things added. So it's quite the journey, and very fitting as well that it's our 50th anniversary coming up. So I just, and this again wasn't planned. It didn't even correlate the dates, and it was something popped up, and I went, "Oh my God." 50 years later, here we are having this sort of like rebirth of things. So absolutely wonderful.
And
In the meantime,
you've also got a new orange light that comes on as well now. So.
It's doing it in the corner. I'm starting to get a little bit worried actually, because it hasn't got orange. It's a blue light, and I don't know why it's flashing orange, and it's never done that before.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But in the meantime, Ewan, thank you so much for your time tonight. It's always a great pleasure, and looking forward to meeting up later in the year.
Yep.
And everybody have a wonderful, pleasant night. We've got a big music festival going on behind us, which is wonderful. But the only trouble is at 10 o'clock every night, they're closing with fireworks. So I have to run and find the cat because she just goes into this complete mental breakdown over it. Poor little bugger. Have a wonderful night, everybody, and good night to all.
Good night.